I forgot to take my force, people. Stand by. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Let's play a clip first.
This is also one of the reasons President Trump is doing so well in the polls. Has President Trump contacted you to be his VP?
I don't want to talk about what we've talked about, but we've talked about what can we do to save this country, and that we will work together to make sure that America remains America. There's so many things that are going on right now. You know, compromising the DOJ, using it to injure your opponents politically. These are things that occur in China and Russia and Cuba. Those are not things that are supposed to occur in this country.
Yeah.
And we should be alarmed, and I think the American people are alarmed.
Do you see more support from the black community for President Trump?
Absolutely. I used to go to places and be the only black face. Not anymore, not by a long shot. And I think people are starting to recognize that the Trump administration was on the side of black America. The things that they enacted were extremely positive. The opportunity zones, HBCU support, all of these things were fantastic. And I think he's going to have a
Snoop Dogg. Tell you what, that's not what he was talking about, and I'm sure all of that matters, but he was talking about criminal justice reform, giving pardons to his boy over at Death Row Records. That's what he was talking about. That stuff is what flies. Now, of course, jobs and everything else, that goes along with it, but you're talking about the guy who wrote the song F Donald Trump and had all these lyrics, you know, and now it's total reversal. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Don't forget to like the videos if you like the videos. And, of course, subscribe whether you're watching on Rumble, YouTube. And you should definitely, of course, sign up. The best place to follow us, which is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. Now, you may be wondering why I got this up. Well, for starters, the reason why is because we have to go over it real quick just to, like, lead into what we were talking about. And the results in New Hampshire, it took a little bit for us to get all of them trickled in little by little for certain townships. There was a couple of townships that Nikki Haley was leading, and apparently there were issues, reporting issues, and that has changed now. So we're going to go over it to talk about how much of her vote in New Hampshire came from motivating behavioral Democrats and Democrats. I mean, they're just registered as independent. Does not mean they don't call themselves Democrats. And it turns out there's a whole hell of a lot of them. Can she do this all across the country on Super Tuesday is the question. Also the question, will she get to Super Tuesday? Because South Carolina is an open primary system. However, Joe Biden is going to need Democrats to vote for him. James Clyburn has been trying to get South Carolina folks to the front of the schedule for many years. He's getting it after a humiliating fourth place finish in Iowa and fifth place finish for Joe Biden in New Hampshire back in 2020. No candidate ever in the history of nominations have ever been beaten as badly as Joe Biden and then gone on to win their party's nomination. And of course, History and empirical data cannot factor in for fudging. And that is what happened in 2020. The media and Barack Obama, and he's very strong. He's got a lot of power on the Democratic side, basically put a halt to Bernie Sanders winning the nomination because he was going to win the nomination. And with a series of backdoor deals and phone calls with Obama and pressure campaigns, and then also the social bias campaign that he got the media to run on the Democratic voter, it was really kind of sad to watch. It was manipulation in its highest form, and Democratic voters fell for it, even though they kept telling us that their heart was for Bernie. And that's really sad. I got to tell you, it's tragic. It really is. But next time, pick your own damn nominee. Be smarter. Anyway, I mean, I'd feel bad for you, but we call you a hive mind for a reason. You don't really have original thoughts. All right, here is the map of New Hampshire now that we're done. You may have remembered this tiny, over one, Fitzwilliam Township. You may have remembered that there was some very strange results going on in Fitzwilliam Township. Nikki Haley had been leading by some ridiculous number. I told you all on election night that something was very odd. There must be an issue. I will call and try to find out what is happening. And I couldn't do it live, but here we are. And by the way, we're having some changes done to the website. So if you see some like font changes and theme, like you see how tiny the words are right there, we're getting there. But there's going to be a lot of changes. A lot of video stuff is going to go up, a lot of other stuff. Everyone has been asking for a list of who is a fraud and who is not. And I've narrowed this down to a couple of names. I'm not going to do every race across the country, although I will allow people to submit a request for us to look at a race. But the truth is, as we're putting together this list of who you should vote for if you believe this and who you should not, the problem, I'm not going to call it an endorsement list. I'm not going to endorse anybody. I'm simply just going to make what is really a voter guide. Are you on the populist right? Are you, more of they're molding, the traditional conservative, they're molding with the populist right. So that's what we're going to do. And then, yes, we're going to give our own opinion, my opinion on what I think you should do when you're in the ballot box. All right. And, there's hypothetical. Many people aren't in the ballot box anymore, but not hypothetical. You know what I mean? Anyway, that night, it was some crazy number. Nikki Haley had some weird thing going on. And then it went to write-in votes for Nikki Haley and other. It was just going crazy. They had some issues. And as I suspected, some townships were having a serious problem reporting on Joe Biden's results. And then we were taking them and adding the write-ins that were for Joe Biden to his full tally. And it was crazy. So Fitzwilliam had some issues. They had to situate it, get it together. They did. And in truth, Donald Trump carried that county 64.7 to 32.0. There were, townships, God almighty. We don't do counties in New Hampshire because they don't report results by county. They report them by township. And it's more accurate to see it like this. Nikki Haley carried one county, which is Groton, however you say it, over on the western region of New Hampshire. Trump carried everything else. Honestly, including, the important counties. Manchester, she carried Concord, but she barely carried it. We told you that would be the worst of his three big city totals. It turned out to be. He almost caught her there. He did catch her in Nashua. And here we are now. The final result is about 52 to 46. So he carried it by about 6 points, a little over. So that brings his total statewide to actually 11.2. It bumped him higher. It was 11 flat. And then after some things got situated, he was catching her. He flipped a couple of townships here and there. And then the rest reported, and most of them tightened. As you can see here, Donald Trump actually did a lot better in the Massachusetts suburbs area than many people thought he was going to do, including myself. She did better in some of these little townships in the central and southwestern part of the state that a lot of people thought she would do, including myself. The reason is very clear. If you can get in some of these townships 10, 20 Democrats to vote, you can carry these townships, all right? And we're just going to call them Biden voters. I want to draw going around in Nikki Haley's vote, depending on the township, as low as in the low 20s, it looks like 22.3%, of her vote in some of these townships came from Biden voters, to a high of over 70. It's almost 76, 75.8% that looked like it came from Biden voters. And Hanover is a great example. Lebanon is likely another one, but we really took obviously a look at Plainfield, Hanover, and Lebanon. And here's Hanover, of course. You could see that she got 1,487 votes in Hanover, which actually brought it down a little bit. There was an adjustment made. I don't know why. But still, just so people understand, Donald Trump got 700 votes in Hanover in the general election in 2020. That's it. About 730 something or whatever it was. More than 75% of Nikki Haley's vote in Hanover Township came from Biden voters. So now that we have New Hampshire in and we can see what was happening here, then we can apply it and look forward. I'm going to tell you what we've learned, because we have learned quite a bit about what Nikki Haley's plan is, what she did, and what they plan to do, they are doing. And we're going to take a look at a state. There's this guy on Twitter, and I'm going to give full credit for it, but I do want to show you what he's talking about in North Carolina, for instance. There are several states that Nikki Haley is targeted and are Democratic allies, because they are Democratic allies. She has really no Republican support anymore. Very little Republican financial support, almost no Republican voting support. I mean, it's incredible. And yet she is getting, there will be extremely high participation. There were just about 8 and 10. I think it was 800,000, 765, whatever it may be. Under 800,000 participated in the South Carolina primary in 2016, and that was already huge. What we're generally expecting, what it looks like, is about 1 million this time around. There will be, it is an open, totally open primary. So there will be a lot of crossover voting. And of course, Nikki Haley is trying to get people not to vote for Joe Biden in South Carolina. If they don't like Joe Biden, then they can go ahead and cross over. Or if they just hate Donald Trump so much that they can go ahead and cross over and vote in the Republican primary. There's, again, a problem with this. Joe Biden needs these votes in South Carolina. He was actually campaigning in South Carolina. It's a very different situation than what we saw in New Hampshire when she had free reign. Free reign. That will not be the case in South Carolina. And certainly, there's the added complication of his very low and depressed vote with black voters, his very low approval rating with black voters, and Donald Trump's extremely strong performance with black voters, especially black voters in the South. So, how all this shakes out is going to be interesting. Nevertheless, it looks like traditional mailers, robocalls to older white Democrats, that's what's going on. Typical literature, postal literature, like I said, but definitely mailers. So far, we haven't really seen anything on the ground, all right? But what we have seen a lot of is digital targeting. And we told you weeks ago, before New Hampshire, that it would be hard to pinpoint exactly what they did with these digital targets, because it's very, the money's all very dark money. Especially when it comes to PACs spending it, it's easy for them to kind of hide what they're doing, especially until we'll find out much later, but we will not find out before this nomination process is officially over. And what it looks like is a series of advertisements and targets at Democrats that ask them, prompt them, it's a call to action, stop Donald Trump. It's not really pro Nikki Haley, although they do just mock her. And by the way, we have some of your internal communications, so do me a favor and deny this. I dare you. I freaking double dog dare you. Pull a Ron DeSantis, say I'm lying, run to Fox News. Please do it. Please. Anyway, the Democrats just think she's a joke. They get their way either way, because for them, they can try to humiliate Donald Trump. The real goal, they don't believe Nikki Haley can win. The real goal is that they drain Donald Trump's resources. However, In the meantime, they may be able to stack up some delegates for her. And then if they were able, with Reid Hoffman's money, to remove Donald Trump from any of these ballots, then they could have a fallback plan in Nikki Haley, who is George Bush in heels. What do they care? Modern Democratic Party is more like George W. Bush than it is like Bill Clinton. It's not even close. Bush was a domestic liberal. He wasn't at first, but he friggin' turned into one. And they're all a bunch of war hawks. They're neocons and neo-libs now, holding hands against the wicked orange man bad that they're terrified he's going to return. So yeah, the main goal is to drain the resource, but they need resources to do it. And this is the thing. Reid Hoffman has bailed after New Hampshire. He looked at it and he said, I'm out. Eventually people confirmed that after I tweeted it and put it on locals. They confirmed it, but there was something else that they're missing, and that's this Democratic group, and they kind of work together. They're not really bundlers. I don't know how to put it, but they are fundraisers, and they have networks of small dollar contributors, and they're blasting it out to fund these efforts that we're just talking about in these little apps, right? And the app will tell you and show you how to change your voter registration. Where is your state? Okay. They're really targeting 6 states, but where is your state? Okay, here are the rules for the primary. You'd have to change your registration if they didn't miss the deadline. That, for instance, in a state like North Carolina, which you're going to go over, it is not closed, but it's not open either. It's a hybrid or a modified system that we label on our map semi-closed, which means if you are registered as the other party and you wish to, if you're a Democrat and you wish to vote in a Republican primary, you generally can't. You would have to, by the deadline, change your registration. And then you would have to either be a Republican or an independent by that certain date. If you miss that certain date, you can change your registration independent. And if you're independent, you can vote on the other side of the aisle. However, what they're not telling people, which I noticed on several of these, they count by where your zip code is. So that's how these things, that's the workflow that it's putting users through. If you are in certain states, they don't seem to be alerting them that there are these provisions where if you do change your registration to, let's say, Republican, you will to independent, but then vote in the Republican primary. You're going to be auto-registered as a Republican. And again, this goes back to what Nikki Haley is doing. I noticed Tyler Bauer from Turning Point USA has quote tweeted a couple of tweets that I've talked about this, in which I've talked about this. And he seems to be the only other one on planet Earth who really gets it. And that's probably because he's dealing with his own data operation and stuff at Turning Point. But he knows what I'm talking about. Those auto registrations are going to taint Republican data. Democrats are always going to know who they are because they know who they funneled off. Republicans are going to have a very difficult time discerning who they are. And yes, you could go through it. It's just, and there's a way to clean it. But the state's always going to update every month and then re-dirty your voter files. You're going to have to wait for things to change, a cycle or two, a primary or two, another presidential primary, a Senate primary. And then Republicans are going to have to make hard choices when they have these attributes that kind of split a voter. He voted in the Republican primary for president, but he voted in the Democratic primary for Senate and the House. I mean, it's crazy. And some people don't and won't vote in those primaries. So they'll be on those rolls even longer, attributed as a Republican. And then what does that matter? They're going to knock on doors. It's going to be a waste of time. They're going to slam the door in your face. We've been over this before. Nikki Haley is costing Republicans millions of dollars. Millions and millions. It's hard to know how much yet because we don't know the final extent of the damage. We're going to have to see as this plays out. South Carolina is not a cheap state to get data from. It's not as small as it once was. There's very different regions. You have upcountry, you have the Piedmont, you have the central region, the Midlands, you have the low country in the southeast, you have the Indian country in the northeast, it's a complicated state. She is costing millions. And the question is, again, with Hoffman out and with one of those very large networks of low dollar donors, can she pull a repeat of what they did in New Hampshire just from a financial situation alone, because they have been touting this $55 million number now for weeks, every day. Like, Nikki Haley's team loves using months old fundraising numbers. They love using months old polling data. The truth is, she has raised a whopping 2 mil out of that entire number they keep touting since New Hampshire. That's it. That's all. So the question is, can they continue this? And will Democrats eventually abandon her? And also, she's going to lose the caucuses in Nevada. The primary could humiliate her because people could vote for none of these candidates in Nevada. I'll tell you what, folks, if it was me, you do what you want to do. If it was me, I would go on Tuesday to the primary in my, where my, whatever my station is. I'd go down to my voting location and I would vote for none of these candidates. Then on Thursday night, I would go caucus for, obviously, Donald Trump's going to win the caucus. But if it was me and you are a Trump supporter, you should do that if you live in the Silver State. Because she's going to have to make a decision between Nevada and South Carolina whether or not she wants to be humiliated in her own home state. If we look at just some of the exit poll numbers from South Carolina in 2016, now Iowa was even more conservative, even though there were a lot of Democrats. They stuffed the place with Democrats. Nikki Haley would not have won a single county if they didn't have all of this money going toward doing this. But nevertheless, they did. You can see the result there. Whoops. There. Sorry, green screen all messed up. You can see the results there in New Hampshire because it is a more attitudinally friendly state to her. So you can see she did better by township, and she did win also a single county. No doubt, though, it was more successful in New Hampshire than it was in Iowa. And that's even true, even though Donald Trump's vote share in New Hampshire was higher than it was in Iowa. She could be blown out by 30 points in South Carolina. And even if she doesn't, it doesn't matter because of the rules in South Carolina. If you believe the polling, and if the polling is even remotely close, even if we give, let's say Donald Trump wins South Carolina by 15.8%, like we showed you last week, in the event they're able to turn the electorate into New Hampshire, even though that, folks, there aren't as many moderates. Here's the problem. She wants to stuff moderates and she wants to stuff independents. South Carolina's over 40% Republican. It's like 42% Republican. It's barely 30% Democrat. And the independents, or the non-Trump independents, the non-Republican independent, there aren't as many of them. The Biden independent as there is in New Hampshire. It's simply a smaller voter pool to pull from. So she doesn't have as many Biden voters to tap. Biden carried, I'm talking about not raw votes. I'm talking about as a share of the overall electorate. Biden carried New Hampshire. 7 points he carried. Donald Trump carried South Carolina, but double digits. It's hard to see her win a single congressional district. You have South Carolina 1. That's Nancy Mace. You have South Carolina 6. And here, do I have it pulled up? I had it ready to go. I think I still do. Yeah, let's pull up South Carolina congressional districts. Well, let me just do it. Yeah. Okay, I want the map. I don't want all the other crap. Okay. I could pull up my map from here, but you're not going to be able to see it as well. So, simple new wiki little image, and you can see. Let's pull it up. A little bit more than that. Thank you. All right. So you have South Carolina 1. That's Nancy Mace. It includes parts of Charleston and suburbs, all the way down, of course, to Beaufort, which is where she did very well against Katie Arrington. You remember that? But it was very close. What did Mace win? 6 points, maybe? Something like that? Oh, hold on. Laura needs... I gave her the link already, but I'll give it to you again. Laura, tell them to check DMs, okay? Oops, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Belay that. I just sent that to the wrong person. Maybe that's why. Okay, but you have Beaufort and all the way to Charleston, and Myrtle Beach area, super pro-Trumpy. Florence, super pro-Trumpy. That, of course, is the PD area. PD, like P-E-E, all right? And then, of course, you have South Carolina, too, which includes Columbia. That would be a target for Nikki Haley as well. But 1, 6, and 2 are about it. Donald Trump does so much better in some of the rural and even purple suburbs. He crushed Nikki Haley in the purple suburbs in New Hampshire. All right. Nikki Haley did well in Democratic areas. In actual competitive suburbs, Trump thrashed her. And there are areas like Salem in New Hampshire all over the outskirts of these congressional districts. Why do I care about this? Why am I showing you? The at-large delegates, of which there are 29 of them statewide, will go to the winner of the statewide vote. Donald Trump is going to win South Carolina. It's just a matter of by how much. But South Carolina is not proportional like New Hampshire is. So very, very soon, there's going to be a delegate math problem from Nikki Haley, who thinks she's going to go in a Super Tuesday with momentum. She said, I don't have to win South Carolina. I just have to do better there than I did in New Hampshire. I don't know what makes her think that's even possible. This is not the same state that it was in 2020 when she was the governor. It's a different state. People have moved there. They're working class, Trump-loving voters. The state has become very, very Trumpy. Greenville, that's the upcountry. He's going to rock her there. Outside of that, Rock Hill and the rest of the Piedmont, Chester, Lancaster. Actually, that's part of it, but Abbeville, Lawrence, he's going to rock her there. I don't know if you guys can see the pointer, but the upcountry, you see the jagged? It's Oconee, Pickens, Greenville, Spartanburg, Cherokee, and York is outside of the upcountry. That's considered the Piedmont, which is Union, Lawrence. This is huge Trump area. He crushed everyone else up there in 2016. But it has become much Trumpier now. Horry County, off where Myrtle Beach is, has received tons and tons of state-to-state migrant transplants who are super, super Trumpy. These are people moving from blue and other states, but they're not blue voters. They are, I don't even want to say they're Republican voters. They're Trumplican voters. This used to be the home of the sweater vest wearing Republican. This is where Fry destroyed his rhino opponent in the 2022 primary. Why? Because he had the endorsement of Donald Trump and he was MAGA. Horry gave him a 30-something point margin in the primary. It was massive. That's where the people are. That's where the votes are. Marion, same thing. And this is the PD area right here. And this is the low country where it's conceivable that she could do better. But Nancy Mace endorses Donald Trump. Nancy Mace is going to be out. They're all out there, from Nancy Mace to the Governor McMaster's, Henry McMaster, Tim Scott, Lindsey Graham. He's got everyone from every spectrum, and she calls it the establishment, what people are going to laugh at. Trump bent the establishment. He bent them to his will. He made them back him. They're not dying to back him because they love him. And by the way, for everybody who said, why does he stick by Lindsey Graham? Well, I think you owe the president an apology, because that was super smart of him to do now, wasn't it? Think he wants an establishment fight? No, he wants them just in tow so he can steamroll everybody and roll through this. We'll come back more to South Carolina, though, because really we can't talk, and we just can't talk that much about Super Tuesday, and I will tell you their plan. But if she gets thrashed in South Carolina, it's just so hard to maybe not. I mean, maybe we're just in this era where they're just nuts and delusional, and they're running for the nominee of the Justice Department, so they don't really care. So they just on and on and on. And it's, again, that's totally, it is totally possible that that's the case. But we're going to stop right now, and we'll talk about it in a little bit after our next segment, and then the break. I'll take a break, and we'll get into it more, and I'll try to answer some of your questions. Right now, I want to re-welcome to the show one of my favorite candidates who's running for Congress this cycle. Is, of course, from my new adopted state of North Carolina, Sandy Smith in North Carolina 1. How you doing, Sandy?
I'm doing great, Richard. Thanks for seeing you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. I noticed I've been following what's going on with you. There's a couple things I definitely want to talk about. But how's everything been so far with your campaign? I noticed you got the endorsement of Eli Crane. You got Paul Gosar since we last talked, and a bunch of others. It's just that I don't think we talked about that much. Like that last time you were on. That there is opposition to MAGA in your area, even though you won the primary last time. The truth is, there are rhinos who don't want you to win this primary, right? I mean, look, we didn't really talk about it that much last time. I want to this time.
Excellent. You're absolutely right. We do have that establishment wing of the party. They have actually dropped in an actual DC plant into this district. Someone who just moved here, 10 minutes ago, if you will, and they're still trying to show up and figure out what the district is. We've had these. It's just the person that I'm running against is a war prophet.
Oh, I think she glitched, Laura. Can you try to get her back? Yeah, she glitched. Can you do it again? Bring her up. Laura will reconnect Sandy. I think, let's give some background though before, because she will reconnect her. Sandy did get the endorsement of Donald Trump last time. It was a tougher district. I'm gonna have to repeat all this because I wanted to bring this up, but some of the things that we can omit when we get her back on. There she is. Is she back? Thumbs up. Yeah. There she is. All right. I knew you were coming back. I said, hang tight. Finish what you were saying though, and then I'll tell people the rest of what I was saying.
So I am, like you said, I'm running in the 1st Congressional District. I am the official America First MAGA candidate. I wear that badge with honor. And right now, I am a target of the establishment rhinos. They do not want a MAGA candidate in office. They know that they can't control us, and that I should say, work for the people. And right now, I have a candidate, or an opponent, I should say, that is an actual DC plant. She just moved here 15 minutes ago and doesn't know the district, doesn't know anything about it. She's a war profiteer, but she's going to tell you how you should live and what we should be doing here in Eastern North Carolina. Just to be quite frank with you, Rich, it's been a monkey see, monkey do campaign with her. If I do something, then she turns around and does it. We know she is not a MAGA. She's not Trumpy, even though she tries to be. We can see through a fake conservative, not a conservative. There's a big difference.
Oh, huge difference. And I just want to say this. If you were really America First, you would never have gotten in this race. End of story. You ran much stronger in a harder it was a harder district for you to run in 22. People need to understand it's not really exactly the same. They, jerried it to make it easier for Democrats, and you still ran stronger than anybody expected you to run. You did. So so there's just no reason. You have the endorsement of Donald Trump in 22. So there's just no reason to look at this race if you are America First and say, oh, I think I'm going to get in here. It's this like Messiah syndrome we're seeing everywhere. And your opponent is pulling what I call the Duarte playbook, which is to copy everything MAGA says and does. But then when you get in, you don't, of course, you're a total rhino vote, but copy even terminology. You're 24 hours after America First, you say or put out statements that make you look like you're America First. There's just absolutely no reason, especially with Donald Trump on the ballot this year. And he's going to be on the ballot. If you are America First, there is no reason to try to do this and split this vote. You were in. It was not, and I don't like to, it was like your turn, but you ran when it was tougher. And
absolutely. And the thing is, if you step back and see, the thing is, a lot of folks don't understand is the 2 times that I've been the Republican nominee in this district, I've ran under completely different districts, totally Democrat leaning districts. The first time I ran in 2020, I ran in a D30 district. That means a Democrat's going to blow out a Republican. You know what I did, Rich? I swung the district 25 points to the Republicans. Shocked everybody. Scared G.K. Butterfield into retirement because he saw the writing on the wall. In 2022, we had our courts come in and redraw our maps, basically gerrymander them for the Democrats, like you said,
Yep.
and it was rated a D7 district. I overperformed by over 5 points. And it's also important to note, I have received more votes than any Republican ever in the history of this region. I've raised more money and have more individual donors than anyone running in this district. I am the strongest candidate, and I'm exactly what the American people need and want. And that's why I got the endorsements of Congressman Eli Crane, Congressman Andy Biggs, Congressman Gosar, Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers. Folks all across the nation and here in North Carolina know exactly what they're getting when they stand behind me, and that is a fighter that has the tenacity and is not going to back down and will keep standing when the establishment rhinos, swamp monsters throw all their garbage at us. So I'm like, bring it on. I wear it all as a badge of honor, like I said before.
Yeah, before we get into immigration, there's just two things I want people to know. One is what happened in 22 was really sad because Governor Cooper had tried to play chicken with the budget over Medicaid expansion. He balked at he lost the fight, and that included the new legislative districts. And then they got the court before the Republicans took the court in 22. They got the liberal court, which was even though it's North Carolina, folks, it was among the craziest left-wing state courts in the country. It's insane to think that, but that's what happens when you elect what you think is a conservative Democrat in a state like North Carolina, like Roy Cooper pretended to be, and many others over the years pretended to be, and they were not. And they nominated or pushed, really, because they're elected, but they would push and fuel these left-wing nutcases who also would run as moderates and conservatives, and then they get on the bench. And these seats can be decided by 500 votes, folks. In 2020, one of them was. So it is no joke. But they don't govern in the mold of a North Carolina voter. They don't rule in the mold of a North Carolina voter. And second thing I want to say is, obviously, when the list comes out, who's going to be on it for North Carolina 1, because what I like about Sandy, folks, is that she ran when it was hard. And I'm telling you that movement is just, this movement, whatever you want to call it, is just filled with a bunch of scammers. And there's just no reason to have interrupted this race like this. There's not. I want to bring this up. I'm going to read you what you wrote, okay? Because immediately, and this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Immediately, when you saw what happened with Texas in the ruling, you said this: I call on North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper to stand with Texas Governor Greg Abbott as he stands up to Joe Biden's horrible immigration policies. Defending our border isn't a partisan issue. Governor Cooper needs to get on board with this American issue and support securing our border. Democrats who play games with human trafficking, fentanyl poisoning of our citizens, terrorist infiltration of our country, and wage suppression of our low and middle income workers are going to be held accountable. Americans won't stand or will not stand for it. And that's what you did. And I'm just going to bring up the map, but I'm going to let you respond. This is the states, and you included that in your statement. I don't know if it's updated. No, because Florida's on it now. So this is the new one, I think. This is the most recent. North Carolina's not on it, Sandy. It's just incredible.
It's not, but you know what? We are going to take back the governor's mansion here in North Carolina in November.
That's right.
And we will definitely join that list of states. We are truly a red state. People call us purple state. No. When you get out and you start meeting with the folks, we are a red state. We get called a purple state because we get complacent. We don't, actually look at the facts, and we fall for the fake, moderates, if you will. You mentioned it perfectly. We got to remember here in our country, it took Ronald Reagan 3 times to become president. And you know what we got? One of the greatest presidents we've ever had in our history of our country. And it took Newt 3 times to get elected to Congress. And you know what we had? A fantastic Speaker of the House. And we got in 1994, the contract with the American people. Right now, I'm facing these DC swamp establishment consultants that are more focused on dropping a radical swamp monster war profiteer into this race so they can control them. And then they're, my opponent, I don't know what she's doing. I don't know if she's 15 minutes late because she's too busy getting herself out of DUIs or what she's actually
Oh,
doing. But, the facts are the facts. People draw a nice, pretty picture, but let's talk about facts, because you're a pollster and you like the facts. The facts is that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask you something. Are you concerned, in North Carolina, like you just brought up, that people call it a purple state, and the truth is it has been inching back to the right since Obama won it in 08, which I would argue there's been a lot of academic research. There's some really good arguments, Sandy, that he really did not win North Carolina, but I'm just going to leave that on the side for now.
Hey, Durham all of a sudden magically found some votes. A lot of folks don't know my congressional race in 2020. They held at 78% for 9 days.
Yeah.
And every time you ask the Board of Elections or a city and House member or Senate members here in North Carolina, the answer is it shouldn't have happened. We don't know why.
3 days tops to count the last of those ballots. For people who don't know the state like we do, they tried to get this 9-day period, but they didn't for late arriving absentee ballots. And there's a 3-day window, which is already insane. That's already ridiculous and insane. But okay, fine. There's a 3-day window.
I think they changed that, actually, and it has to be received by, like, 7:30 on election night.
Did they change it since 2020? Probably did. Okay, yeah, that's good.
They got that, and we got voter ID.
That's right. Yeah, because now the courts can't go and overdo it again this time, and that's why it's so important. You would have a referendum. I think it happened twice, Sandy, in this state. You have a referendum. Voters overwhelmingly say, of course we want voter ID, because there wasn't in North Carolina. And every time it was voted on, it would pass overwhelmingly by a state referendum. And then the Supreme Court, when it was liberal, the last ruling was insane. They basically called voters racist, for even supporting it. It's nuts. But that's why it was so important that Allen won and others won, because now they have no recourse if the governor is outnumbered the way he is in the legislature. They can't run to the legislature to try to do anything. It's done. It's a done deal. So, and even if they did, or even if Governor Cooper did try to do something, it wouldn't matter. He'd be overridden. They have, and that's where I was going before, is that look at 22. Everyone talked about Florida and the red wave that never occurred except for in Florida. And the truth is, North Carolina was a red wave. I mean, if you were looking at North Carolina, the legislatures, both the Senate and the House, both Supreme Court races, the U.S. Senate race, Beasley went down by what? I think it was a little over 4 points, something like that. But Cheryl Beasley tried to run as a moderate. She did everything that others have done in the past as Democrats to try to win statewide. It just seems like it's getting harder. All Ted Budd did was run commercials. I'm endorsed by Donald Trump. He was a great president. And when he comes back, I'm going to stand with him. That's all he did. And inflation sucks. And that's it. That's all he did. And he won, and he won pretty convincingly. He won pretty handily. It really wasn't all that competitive at the end of the day. But I'm looking, I wanted to ask you.
And just real quick on my district, we, first of all, I overperformed, but the other thing is I had millions of dollars spent against me, our party picked and chose who they were supporting. Matter of fact, there was MAGA candidates across the country that they felt that they could spare their seats.
That's right.
And had we flipped 6,000 votes, I'd be a sitting congresswoman. And that's the other thing. If we look at the current map, I would have won under the current map in 2020 by over 8,000 votes. But what's really important, that's with no outside spending money. So that's huge.
You would have, just so people know what we're talking about, it was 52 to 48 in a district that they made much more Republican. So Sandy did overperform the partisan lean of the district and got outspent unbelievably. You can go to Ballotpedia and just look at some of these numbers. It's insane. And this is what I was going to ask you, because you're no doubt one of the districts, and the viewers know because we've talked about it a lot. You're no doubt one of those districts where McCarthy and company thought, you know what, we can sacrifice this MAGA candidate because we're going to make it up in Connecticut 5. We're going to make it up in Rhode Island 2. I mean, or Rhode Island 1. It was just insane. And they lost anyway, Sandy. They lost anyway. So people love to point to you, to John Gibbs and others. J.R. Majewski in Ohio is another great example where Donald Trump endorsed, and because you got that endorsement as well, Donald Trump endorsed the candidate, they lost, and then they used it to try to set this narrative. It didn't hold. But the truth is, in your race, it's totally the opposite of the truth, what they're talking about. Their candidates, even in Virginia, by the way, underperformed. And you did about as well as could have expected given the rest of the national results. Actually better. Again, better. A couple of points. You should have at least done 3 points worse, honestly. And you didn't.
And then the other thing is, I was one of the top. There was only 3 Republicans in North Carolina that outperformed, and I was the only other 2 were a heavy R district, which was McHenry's district, and I think Murphy's district, which those are given strong Republican hotspots, and I actually overperformed everyone else in regards.
That's Murphy's me. And this is great, and it's a great example of again yet another media narrative that's just not really true. Like somehow they turn Trumpism and MAGA, America First, turns off women in the burbs, and it really just depends on the burbs. Look at Moorhead. I don't have to tell you. You know the state. Moorhead is affluent. Everyone's got a yacht or a Marlin boat, right? And this is it's Trump plus 31 or something some ridiculous number. It actually went 2 points more Trumpy than it did in 16. And then in 22, I think it inched another point or so if you just look at that part of the district. So, I agree. North Carolina is getting redder. But I wanted to ask you if you're concerned about this. This Nikki Haley is spending a fortune trying to get Democrats to change their registration and a vote in open primary systems. And here in North Carolina, it's technically not opened, but people can register as independents if they're Democrats and then choose which party primary they want to participate in. I'm looking at the Democrats have been falling off for a while. So I'm not concerned about Democrats losing their voter registration edge. It's less than 200,000 now, which is insane. It's following Florida, folks. It really looks like Florida's pattern in the 16 to 18 range. But now it's under 200,000. There is an acceleration though, Sandy. Like, listen to this. 3 weeks ago, it was 2,422,000. A week after that, 2,421,000 and change. And now this week, it really accelerated. 2,419,000. So it's picking up the pace. And I'm telling you, I attribute this to Nikki Haley playing around. And this is going to be a problem for like Republican data. Is going to get tainted, and it's going to hurt people like you. I mean, there's no doubt, because when you go to knock on doors or you go to send out mailers, you're going to be wasting all this money. Should North Carolina just close their primary? What do you think?
I think there is a strong desire to do that. They've been trying to do that for quite a while. The thing to remember, we've had an increase in the unaffiliated voters registration here in North Carolina. And that is because we have folks from both parties that are just disgusted and discouraged with the direction. And they've decided they don't want to belong to any official party. The thing is, with the independent unaffiliateds, they tend to pull a Republican ballot 2-1. So that's a good thing. And I'm a firm believer that, I think we as Republicans should be picking our nominees throughout our state and in our local races. And so if we can get that changed, I think it would be great. I know people are pushing the legislature to change it. I know they're pushing the state party to do that. So it remains to be seen. We shall see.
It's a shame, because for years I argued that because I was in Florida for so many years, it was always closed. And I always argued that you want independent interest. Remember in 2016, Donald Trump was bringing in all these new Republican voters that were not able to vote in the past. And, Ted Cruz's crew was furious that he was winning these votes, and, it was hurting Cruz. And I would argue that it's a good thing. You want to bring people into your party, but it's not supposed to be manipulated like this. It's not supposed to be inorganic. If it's organic and they're true conversions, that's great. And build the tent, build it bigger. But that's not what's happening here. And that's a tragedy, because I think I'm going to have to change my mind if this is going to continue. And that's sad. That really is sad, Sandy. I think it's a sad day. I do. If that has to be the way it's got, if that has to be the case, because people are going to do what Nikki Haley's campaign is doing. It's sad.
Yeah.
By the way, Bo Hines, by the way.
That is very sad.
It's sad. It is. It's tragic, because you want these people to be interested in your party and your message, and you want to win them over. You can start in the primary process by bringing them into the fold when you're having your primaries. So it's like you start that process before the general election even comes. And unfortunately, if it's going to be manipulated, then I'm going to have to change my mind, and they're going to have to be closed, because then another party can really do what Rush Limbaugh used to talk about, Operation Chaos. They could really screw it up, and you can end up with a nominee that nobody's going to come out and vote for because they don't like them. Nikki Haley's voters aren't Republicans. Can we get serious? These are not even Republican voters. And by the way, the other one was Bo Hines. I mean, he did not do as well as expected. And it's another example. And he tended to be, he wasn't put in the same category with you, right? So let me ask you, because I think, we're already started touching on this. Last time you were on, I asked you what your top passion issues were and what you thought voters cared about the most. Has that changed? I mean, you went right for election integrity and immigration last time. Where are you now on this? I mean, a couple of months later.
I think election and integrity is going to remain a hot subject of our country, especially what we're seeing coming out of Georgia, what we're seeing come out of Arizona. This is not a single state issue. This is an issue across the country, and we definitely need to address that. But the border, especially with what's going on in Texas and what Governor Abbott's been doing, I think that has lit that issue on fire. People here, I mean, I was this morning before I got on, I got called and said the convoy was going to be passing through and wanted me to get out there and support them. And unfortunately I couldn't because of having to be on with you. But these people are fired up. They are tired of the craziness coming across the border. They're seeing their families, have issues with the drugs, the fentanyl, the human trafficking, and more really important as well is the wages. We talked about it earlier. When we're allowing these illegals to come over so quickly, process their paperwork, and expedite them to get a work permit, we're taking jobs away from American citizens. And, we're struggling. So this is a huge, huge issue, and we must protect our country. And I'll tell you what, we must, as a nation, stand behind Texas and support what they are doing. What the Biden regime is doing is absolutely unfathomable, and it's ridiculous. It's scary. It's like he's burning down the house.
Some of the biggest protests about what's going on with immigration in this country now has come from the Black community, which is just changing, upsetting the apple cart and everyone's math, right, on how to win elections. Yet, the Democratic incumbent hasn't said a word. Not a word, Sandy.
Nothing, because they put their head in the sand, pretend like there's nothing going on, and they can ignore it and pretend it's not happening. But another issue that's really hot right here in North Carolina is parental rights and, school choice. And I mean, we've got a hot contested Department of Public Instruction race here in North Carolina. We got a fierce mama bear, and then we have the incumbent. That's going to be a real interesting race to follow here because families are fed up. They're tired of their children getting pushed aside to these illegals coming in. I don't know if you heard about it, but we've had some of these schools were deciding.
We have problems.
Yeah, they're having problems, but they were actually trying to move illegal aliens into those facilities and move American children with disabilities out. So it's a huge issue.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit fortunate where we are here because anytime it's crazy. The school board is still so liberal, and there's superintendent has made some ridiculous thing, but there's always a massive outcry and blowback when they open their mouths or they try to do something stupid. They lost several races, and tragically, again, immigration is huge, not only because of that. But also because of the drugs that are obviously and inevitably finding their way in the schools. One of our electeds, and she's a friend, our stepson, he's not an opiate user, Sandy. It's just that sometimes kids get together and do dumb stuff and they party. He thought he was taking Percocet. He did, it looked just like a Percocet. Sandy. I mean, it was amazing how well these people recreate with these presses. And it wasn't. It was fentanyl. And he was 19 years old. He died right before Christmas of an overdose. And just so tragic. I mean, just so tragic. So,
and it's happening here, folks. This is not something that's happening just in Texas. It's happening here in rural North Carolina. I know of a gentleman who's supportive of our campaign and actually works on our campaign as a volunteer. His sister died of fentanyl overdose, and this is in a little country town. And I mean, they're targeting our children when they're coloring these things where they look like candy. Like you're saying, they look just like a Percocet or whatever. I mean,
he thought he was taking like a 5 milligram Percocet. That's what he thought he was taking.
Not that drugs are good, but the thing is, they are masking this deadly drug and getting into our country and getting our community and killing our families. It's horrible.
And then also, like you said, parental rights, a big deal. The transgender issue. My my son and his friends were just in a group chat, and he had sent it to me, and it was the former president saying, "This is what I'm going to do when I get back in office." And one of the things, of course, it's making these kids uncomfortable. They don't know what to do. It's because it's a fad. It's not mental health. It's a social contagion. It's a fad. And boys, girls. I mean, there was not just boys being boys in that chat, and they were like, "Please, God, do this," because, and not that we don't, we care about what somebody else wants to do, but the rules are getting ridiculous, and we're at a point now where some of their friends have to just like take shots from biological, both biological men who now identify as female are allowed to physically assault and touch, and you can't, as a guy, you can't defend yourself, which is crazy, Sandy. And then of course you have biological females who are now identifying as men, so they think they can get in fist fights with guys, and guys are just supposed to just sit there and take it. This is insane. I don't know. I have a son, of course, too, but I can't even imagine growing up in this environment, especially in a school like the one I went to. I did not go to a nice school like my kids go to. I went to the school of hard knocks, and it was tough. And, there was physical violence every day in that place. I can't even imagine being around that. And it's sad. It's tragic. So even the young kids are like, this is crazy. And we can't say anything. And we have to sit there with our mouth shut. It's not right. It's not the environment we should be raising our kids in. It should be about education and learning things, not dealing with people's social mental disabilities. I don't know what else to call them, but that is what it is. It's 12:58. I'll let you run, but tell people. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, respond. By all means, respond.
I was just, I think we have a society that just wants to belong to something, and they're making this the cool thing to do, and it's not. It's horrific what they are indoctrinating our children with. So,
you know what my answer is to that, Sandy? Go to church.
Amen to that.
Go to church.
Amen.
I know it's hard to find one. We miss our church in Florida, and we're having a difficult time finding a home. But man, if you ever get to the point where there's a hole in your soul that you need, that's supposed to be for God, that you have to fill with something else, please do not let that be it. And it is. It's got all of the hallmarks of a fad, and that it's a social contagion. It has none of the hallmarks of a legitimate medical situation, a legitimate medical, I don't care what anybody says. 20 years ago, it was characterized as something totally different, and than it is now. This is about ideology, Sandy. This is not about health. And it's sad because there's going to be a whole lost generation if we don't put an end to this real soon. And it will be, when it comes to surgeries and all of that are being pushed on kids without parent, consent. They're being given all this information. That 30, 40 years from now, we're going to look back at this as like the biggest era of child abuse ever. And how could anybody have just sat there and allowed it? That's what we're going to say about it.
I agree with you 100%.
Tell people where they can, follow along and support you, learn more about you, all of that.
Absolutely, Rich. Thank you again for allowing me to come on. Let's make history in the 1st Congressional District. We have not had a Republican in this seat since Reconstruction. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on X. Follow me on all social media platforms at Sandy Smith NC. Check out my website, sandysmithnc.com. Click on that donate. My opponent is dumping millions of dollars because the DC swamp supports her and is focused on taking out America First candidates because they know they are bought and paid for. We need to make sure we get me across that finish line. It's going to be a tight race. We all know that, but we are going to win, and I want everyone on my team. So
well, thanks for coming by as always, Sandy. It's always great talking with you, and keep us up to date, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Sandy. I'll tell you guys, I wish she was running against Greg Murphy in 3. I'd vote for her in a heartbeat. I love her. She's North Carolina through and through. And you know what? I'm telling you, she ran. This is a big deal to me. It's a big deal. And Laura calls it the Messiah complex. We've talked about this so much, but I've seen this over my career over and over and over with Republicans. I almost never see it on the Democratic side, and certainly not now, because whatever fight they did have, the establishment lost. You know, the Richard Angles are gone. All of Nancy Pelosi's once like Israel supporting, somewhat moderate, I don't want to call them moderate, but somewhat moderate, more moderate than just crazy fanatical Marxists, have all been defeated. And they were replaced with like the Bushes and the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaibs and the Ilhan Omars and so many others that may look like they're moderates, and then just there's nothing moderate about them. They never break with their party, never. And to the point where everyone's an election denier. Sandy's an election denier. Donald Trump's an election denier. A whole host I could go down. Meanwhile, they literally elected as a leader in the U.S. House a guy who was an election denier. Hakeem Jeffries, on multiple occasions, said the more he had learned about the 2016 presidential election, the less credible he believed it to be. He called Donald Trump an illegitimate president. I mean, this is something you can't make it up. It's insane. You cannot make it up. It's insane. All right, it is 1:02, and we're gonna have to take a break here real soon. But yeah, I steamrolled through those numbers. Let me give you those numbers again. Okay, 3 weeks ago, and we're gonna talk more about this. Normally weekly, what's normal, Rich? A couple hundred, right? There have been some weeks where it was like 800, but a couple hundred in the reduction of Democratic registrations weekly. That is what is normal in North Carolina and has been for some time. Sometimes they're very small. You know, last month there was a week we were looking at, and the difference was like 87. All right. And Sandy is 100% correct that it's been going on a while, and it's resulted in this big bloating of the unaffiliated voter. They do vote more in Republican primaries than Democratic primaries. So we'll just have to see how it goes. And then also, not only that, in the general election, some of these polls had Joe Biden winning the unaffiliated voter. That did not happen. Donald Trump won the unaffiliated voter, and Republicans voted at higher rates. And then Ted Budd, of course, won them pretty handily. So we know they've been moving and shifting to the right. So that's why we're looking at this, to see if there's any kind of disruption in that as we approach Super Tuesday and the North Carolina primary with what Nikki Haley is doing. And again, to give you the 411, 3 weeks ago it was 2,422,080. Then the week after that, it was 2,421,154, which was already an acceleration to like 900 registrations. And now this week, it's fallen almost 2,000 to 2,419,118. That is a lot. That is not something. Now, it can be, maybe it's just noise, and the following week we'll see something different, but that is not something, that's not a pattern. It's an acceleration. All right. It's bigger than normal. And by the way, just one more word about Sandy Smith's race. You know, Don Davis had a few opponents. They weren't a big deal. He dispatched them. Most of the $2 million that he spent, which was, I think, slightly more than he raised or something, was spent against Sandy. You know, like, they didn't expend all of this money during their primaries. They don't do that when it's clear that someone else has an advantage. Meanwhile, because really, who was the most? Erica Smith raised a little less than $1 million. She spent $955,000. I'm looking at it right now. But on Sandy's side, where she was the favorite, you can see that she had done very good raising money, and there was a whole bunch of other people that jumped in. Brent Robertson, less than 100,000. He winds up raising. He spends every dollar. Sandy Roberson, who was another winner, raises over $1 million, spends almost every dollar of it, of 1.2 million, blows it all and ends up with like $5,000 cash on hand. And it's Sandy who raises the most, but she has to expel so much in the primary. By the time they get to the general election, the Democrat has a spending advantage, has a cash advantage. And this is just stupid. Why? For a Messiah complex? This is dumb. Sorry. Republicans are getting to the point where we know a lot of these people are voting anyway for Democrats in the general election. I'm not sure why so many of them with this Messiah complex are even bothering in the Republican. It's because they want to really control both parties. There's no other explanation, right? And it doesn't make any sense. It's better to try to pull the Tea Party play how they responded to the Tea Party, which was, we can't beat them, so let's be posers, pretend we're like them, and then jump into these races, win them as the Tea Party favorite, and then end up being total shills and rhinos. That's what Frank Langford did. Adam Kinzinger pretended to be a Tea Party Republican. The list goes on and on. Nikki Haley was the governor of South Carolina because she ran as the Tea Party conservative. Marco Rubio, ditto, although he is nowhere near any of those others and does not deserve to be put into the category with them. John Duarte stole every word from David Giglio's messaging campaign last cycle and just had 4 times the money to spend on it. We even saw him copy the phrase cost of living crisis. It was all over signs. It was all over advertising. It was all over literature, from postal to door literature. I mean, it was all over David's stuff. He just had a ton more money. They pose as America First, like they posed as Tea Party. And sadly, a lot of people get duped by this. Like Mike Flynn, General Flynn, knows Sandy was endorsed by Donald Trump. Why did he endorse her opponent, who is a deep state shill? It's a little weird, but we see it all the time. Rick Grinnell just endorsed Sheriff Boudreaux in California 13. Why, Rick? He's an amnesty pusher. He doesn't support Donald Trump's deportation plan. Why would you endorse somebody like that? So when Donald Trump gets in and wants to deport people, Sheriff Boudreaux flips out, joins with the Democrats to stop him from deporting people. Like, this is just the same story, the same movie. We're just watching it over and over and over, and somehow we expect there's going to be a different ending or something. Can't be, man. It just can't be. There cannot be alternatives. Don't let them manipulate you. Don't let them dupe you, which is why I decided that I'm going to come out with that list. I didn't like the idea of endorsing people. They're not endorsements, really. It is a voter guide. That's what it's going to be. If you share these views, then this is who you should vote for. End of story. All right, so let's take a real quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about these numbers. We'll go to Super Tuesday. We'll go into some of the states. We'll look at the nomination map, because I want you to understand how quickly this delegate math is going to get away from Nikki Haley. I mean, this is just, it took Ron DeSantis 10 days to realize that he didn't have a path. I don't know what Nikki Haley's doing. As long as she has this Democratic support, because it's not Republican support, I'm wondering whether or not she's really okay with being humiliated in her own state. She is not going to win South Carolina, folks. She's not. All right, let's take a break. Our friends at Field of Greens, by the way, great feedback. We got a couple emails and a couple messages about it, and I'm dead serious. Send me your feedback. I love reading that stuff. Love reading it. If you wanted to get healthier in 2024, maybe you made a resolution, or you did what I tell you to do, which is set goals. It's a lot easier to set them and then carry them out, right? It's not so easy, especially when it comes to better nutrition, which is key to health and longevity. A healthier diet could even help you avoid health risks that run in your family. But if you're like Laura and I, we get all those greens, get all those vegetables, fruits and vegetables. It is basically impossible. You can't, first of all, it's very expensive. Secondly, it's not like logistically possible to eat all of that in the course of a day when you have a thing called a life to live. All right. So Field of Greens is our healthy superfruit and vegetable habit. It's the only fruit and vegetable product that literally promises better health. And at your next checkup, your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. Do your vitamins or green drinks, your big con beet things promise that? No, they do not. Each superfruit and vegetable that is in Field of Greens was selected by a doctor for a specific health benefit. Some support your heart, lungs, kidneys. Others support metabolism for healthy energy and weight loss. Look, if you want to get healthier in 24, start with Field of Greens. I got you 15% off and free rush shipping. Go to fieldofgreens.com and use the promo code TPP. The link is in the description to the video right here if you scroll down. That's promo code TPP at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. Whatever flavor you pick, I have frankly not tried them all. I got to like the lemon lime one, and it's on my desk right here, and I just stick with it. And you can see it right up top, right there. Laura, she likes to mix berry. You guys, it's up to you. But I love lemon lime stuff. I love it. I love all lemon lime stuff. Comes to Gatorade or Powerade. I don't like all those fancy flavors, blues, reds. I mean, I like something, but I just feel like it's not getting the job done. Well, lemon lime is it. Now that I don't live in Gainesville anymore, I'm not a longtime Gainesville resident. I can say this: Gatorade sucks compared to Powerade. It's like blasphemy to drink Powerade instead of Gatorade if you live in Gainesville. You guys know what I'm talking about. Gatorade was created, of course, Gatorade, right? So it's blasphemy to drink Powerade instead of Gatorade. Just like here, it's like Pepsi or bust, because the pharmacist who invented Pepsi is from here. The Pepsi Cola factory, which you can tour. It's historic. It's awesome. It honestly really is. The place where that pharmacist created Pepsi Cola, the formula for it, is actually a restaurant now that Laura and I absolutely love. It's really cool. I mean, there's a lot of history. And honestly, this is another thing. Like, I'm not huge on the idea that you have to elect people who are from your area, but I don't like the idea of these, like, astroturfing these DC candidates. Like, if you go to North Carolina's 1st congressional district and look at the people and talk to the people, you will see Sandy Smith represents the 1st congressional district. She is a very, despite, what they call her, she's a radical MAGA. Yeah, that's how they are there, and it's not radical. If you just blind polled people and said, what do you think? Is your view more close to this? Do your views more closely align with this idea, or that idea? You're most definitely going to get more people who say they align with this one where Sandy is than that one where everybody else is. There's just no doubt. I mean, she's a representative of a center to right female living in the 1st congressional district. So I think that's a lot of history. Seriously, I love history, really do. All right, let's bring up, shall we? Give me 1 second. I don't know why these fonts aren't loading on every page. It's a little bit weird. Something happened. Maybe I gotta purge the cache or something. I don't know, but we're doing a lot of work. We're having some Node.js looks like built for the API, so we can have the coolest election show ever, which is going to be great. When that's done, you won't see that many changes except for, like, the way things look, but nothing big. All right, let's go to the 2020 nomination map, which is on peoplespunditdaily.com, peoplespunditdaily.com if you want to check it out. That's where we'll put all of we always do, for those who don't know, our live results. And here, let me throw this in there for you guys. YouTube, Locals, Rumble, all you guys. I'm going to send this to you guys right now. I know Locals has it, but just in case, here, Getter. That's for you. Rumble, here you go, just in case. All right, so you could always go to the front page of peoplespunditdaily.com and find the results to different things. You now can toggle between the Republican and Democratic primaries. Obviously, we've only had one Democratic primary, but there's literally a toggle button below the fold where if you want the Republican primary results, it's already defaulted to Republican. And then if you want the Democratic one, click on it. You'll see the toggle slide over, cool little switch, slide on over, and then the Republican results will disappear and the graphics for the Democrat one will continue to add, of course, to the Democratic graphic as there are more results. But you will see you have to click on them to get the results. They're separate pages, but you'll see the promo banners for them. You just click on them. This is the first thing that you'll see if you go to People's Pundit Daily right now. And that is like basically all things Republican primary related. And it's the delegate tracker, the map, the schedule, table for the schedule, which also includes the rules and counts of delegates and everything. I have to be honest with you. I disagree with Decision Desk's delegate math from New Hampshire. And we needed all of these things to roll in. Now that it has, I expect that it will change. Again, you could go to New Hampshire if you want to figure out how to do the rounding rules yourself. You can go ahead and do it. Donald Trump is nearest to the rounding rule, so he gets the extra delegate. So really, and so far it looks like Presidential Green Papers agrees with me, but the Decision Desk is the one who has the tracker there. My calculation is 12 delegates from New Hampshire went to Donald Trump. 10 are going to go to Nikki Haley. That's going to be resolved. There's always one delegate that's up in the air for a bit. They'll be hammered out later. But as of right now, he won by 11.2%. It is proportional. You can even see the equation for how you do it. They both met the 10% threshold. So you can multiply each percentage of the candidate by, their percentage of the vote by 22, and then you round to the nearest whole numbers. And here's the kicker. If delegates remain, which there is one, they are awarded to the winner of the statewide vote. I think as of right now, let me see. Yeah, it's wrong. I'm telling you, it's wrong. They're going to have to give another delegate to Donald Trump. That's how it's going to go. It's going to end up 12-10 at least. It could be 13-9, honestly, but we'll see. I don't think there's that much left in outstanding, so we'll just have to say. I'm being generous here. But as for right now, they have it like 11-9, and that's just not right. Or 11-10 or something. I have to go back and look. Anyway, here is the map. And let me get you the schedule. Let's get the schedule. Come on up. Let's go, schedule. I could scroll down, but then I'll lose the map. So I have it separate here. Bear with me. You will have, of course, South Carolina. The Silver State is in 10 days. So on February 8th, we're going to get the caucus on Thursday, February 8th. All 26 delegates are probably going to go to Donald Trump. Obviously, there could be some little tweaks. There are other people that are being caucused, but it's, they're out. But we expect him to get all 26 delegates. Why? There are minimum thresholds in Nevada that you have to meet. It's a weird minimum threshold, okay? 3.846% is required in order for a candidate to be allocated delegates. So I don't think anyone else, a single candidate, is going to get anywhere near that other than Donald Trump. You can get a half a point, 1 point, whatever. But that's the way it's going to be. So it is proportional, but it'll take all of them. Then we move to South Carolina, which we talked about before. Let's assume, I'm sorry, I got to take this. I got these stupid hiccups. Let's assume she gets past South Carolina, or what her memo show says, survive. We have to survive South Carolina. If you remember what she was saying on Meet the Press yesterday, maybe you don't. Hold on. Let's see if we can grab that video, Laura. Nikki Haley, Meet the Press. We should play it, and then you'll understand where I'm going with this. That's a very short one. Yeah, she really stuck it. I don't even know what to say. I mean, she's just siding with E. Jean Carroll on Meet the Press. It was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I just don't know. Okay, here we go. Here's a great clip. Let's do this one. Let me get rid of this. Let's play her clip. I want you to listen carefully to what she's saying about what is and is not a strong enough performance in order for her to continue. Folks, you cannot lose your own home state and be a viable candidate. No, that's never happened before. You just can't. It's humiliating. It's the thing that political obituaries are made of. Robert Haley is right. It is a death sentence for a political candidate. And yet, listen carefully to how she describes this when asked. Volume up. Yep. Okay.
Let's talk about your path forward. As you know, Trump has a double-digit lead in the polls. He secured the endorsement of a lot of the top officials in your state. Do you need to win South Carolina, your home state, in order to win the nomination?
First, she'll duck.
Well, let's first talk about the people that he surrounded himself in South Carolina. Yes, he got the endorsement of the governor, but that's the same governor that I defeated when I ran for governor. Yes, he got the endorsement of the political class in.
This is called a pivot. She's deflecting. She's doing what politicians do when they don't want to answer a question. Okay. She is pivoting. Yes, Henry McMaster, you defeated when you ran against him as the Tea Party candidate 800 years ago when South Carolina looked very different, Nikki. All right. We all know, by the way, what you did to get in good with the right people. All right. So let's keep this on the level here. Okay. He was not considered MAGA back then. There was no such thing. There was no issue with her. She was the Tea Party favorite. So she won the Tea Party kind of vote, which was all the energy back then. However, when she left South Carolina, the voters of South Carolina were done with her, including Republican voters. They wanted Henry McMaster, who was very much an ally of Donald Trump, who was viewed to be MAGA. There was widespread voter remorse from when she was the governor, elected as the governor. I mean, so let's just stop, all right, with this. I mean, the answer, she doesn't want to answer the question, so she's pulling this. We also heard it a million times when she was in New Hampshire, and we heard her mock, and along with Sununu, mock Tim Scott. And why would we care about Tim Scott? The guy had no support, and he's out of the race now. And the truth is, if you went back, Tim Scott had more of the vote in early polls than Sununu had. There was a point where Tim Scott was able to reach a number higher than Sununu when Emerson and others were asking whether or not Sununu would, how would you vote for him if he jumped in this race? Sununu got, I think, 6% of the New Hampshire Republican primary vote. That's it. And at one point, Tim Scott was in double digits. So when he had his moment of surge, you remember that? He even surged somewhat in Iowa for a little bit. So it's ironic. I mean, they're out there like trashing all these people, making fun of all these people when they were humiliated. I mean, Sununu, his entire political base, his family, the dynasty is from Salem. It voted 70% almost for Donald Trump. He was completely humiliated. And these people just go on with it. Answer the question, Nikki.
In South Carolina, but that's the same group that I forced to have to show their votes on the record. It's the same group that I forced to pass ethics reform where they had to disclose their income. It's the same group where I vetoed $500 million of pet projects that I didn't think taxpayer dollars should go to. So there's no surprise there that the political leader surrounding him there, Trump has become an insider. That's what it comes down to, is he's more interested in satisfying the elected class than he is in satisfying the people. When it comes to South
Trump, the insider. It's so ludicrous. Is there listen, was Andrew Jackson, when he made his comeback, was he an insider? There's Roger right there, South Carolina here. Most can't stand her after she showed her true colors as governor. I've not met anyone who's voting for Haley. Honestly, I mean, it's unbelievable that she would. Exactly. What does South Carolina have to show for this? She raised taxes. She killed school choice. She gave millions of subsidies to Boeing when 2 planes fell out of the sky, killed almost 400, took almost 400 souls with them. It's a joke. This is a joke. People couldn't stand her. The transgender bathroom thing, she killed that too, Nathan. One mass shooting, and she's trying to take guns. Flags come down. Monuments are about to be ripped apart. What is she talking about? And again, there's a difference between being an insurgent and an outsider and being establishment. And to call Trump establishment because he forced the party to move in his direction is just insane. Believe me, I know these people. Steve Daines did not want to endorse Donald Trump. Believe me. He did so because he saw the handwriting was on the wall, and he also saw what I have been telling you and focusing on all last year. And, we'll get back to it very soon. But the Trump or bust vote. Steve Daines wants to win the Senate. He wants to control the Senate. He knows with millions and millions of voters who only vote for Donald Trump, who only come out when Donald Trump is on the ballot, is going to help him do that. He can't win against John Tester in his own state without them. He can't win in Arizona without them. We can keep going. The list goes on and on in states everyone thinks are just so easy. Ted Cruz is in trouble in Texas right now. You think he was dying to endorse Donald Trump? Don't you find it funny that he endorsed Donald Trump within 72 hours of the Emerson poll, showing him almost tied with his Democratic opponent, while Donald Trump was stomping Joe Biden by 8 points, 15 points stronger with Hispanics, 3 points stronger with whites, I think 4 points stronger in the suburbs. You don't think it's funny or coincidental at all? Man, Trump is not getting the donor class. Had a nice scoop on locals. Maybe I'll share it with you guys if we have time. But it was up exclusively on locals. Had a little plant in a meeting. They didn't know. And I was able to confirm it. But Steve Schwartzman, who is Wall Street's biggest donor, and he once served as an unofficial advisor to Donald Trump on his economic panel, like his forum. He had this economic panel they were like unofficial advisors. CEO of Dow Chemical. Schwartzman is, of course, the CEO and chairman of Blackstone Group. He is the biggest single donor from Wall Street. In 20, he gave $27 million to various politicians himself, including Donald Trump. Normally, these guys give to groups, but Schwartzman was the biggest single dollar donor. And he had some interesting things to say about the potential candidates in this little meeting. They don't want him. This is a guy who once was, touting how Trump asked him for his advice. He don't want him. And the reason why is hilarious. Until you see what he has to say about Nikki Haley. You know what? I am going to bring it up. I know it was just for you guys locals, but it's been out for like a week now. So I'm going to share it with everybody else if you guys don't mind, because I think it's important. I'm not going to post it, but I'll tell them. I'm not going to post the whole article, but I'll tell them the tidbits he had to say about Joe Biden, Nikki Haley, and former President Trump.
Carolina, look, we wanted to be strong. And I think we started with 2% in Iowa. We ended up with 20%. We got to New Hampshire. We needed to do better than that. And we did. We got 43% of the vote. Now we're going into South Carolina. We need to be stronger than what we did in New Hampshire. And so that's certainly.
Okay. That is not, we have to win South Carolina. What if she isn't? What if she comes in at 40%? He beats her by 20, 60-40. Is she going to stop? This is the first candidate I have ever heard of who is saying outwardly that she does not have to win her own home state.
What we need to do, but it's not just that we need to be stronger, Kristen. Trump needs to be stronger. He's not getting the independent vote. He's not getting a segment of the Republicans.
First of all, he lost the moderates. He won the independents in Iowa. Okay. New Hampshire was totally different because it was a much bigger turnout. There were behavioral independents. I got to give a hat tip to Sean Trendy. They have something called The Takeaway, a podcast on Real Clear Politics every week. They'll end the week and cap it off. Carl Cannon, sometimes Philip Wegman, Tom Bevan. There's, a couple of people that usually come on, and then they have like an outsider or, they'll bring in one of their analysts like Sean Trendy. And so far, I've only heard Sean Trendy tell the truth, which is because somebody was like, well, he's saying exactly what Nikki Haley is saying right now. Why don't we let this go on? It's showing Trump's weak. It's showing his strengths, but it's also showing his weaknesses. And Sean was like, can we cut the crap? That was not a normal electorate. She got a bunch of Biden independents to vote for her. Not a small amount, a huge amount. If it was a normal Republican New Hampshire primary, Donald Trump would have won Republicans and independents. The polling that had him up by 20 points absolutely showed him winning independents by the time it was all over. Many of them did. Even Suffolk was basically tied at that point. The polls weren't really wrong. They weren't wrong about vote preference. They were wrong about how many Biden voters were going to cross over. They knew it would be more than last time. The Suffolk poll was only 3% Democrat or 4% Democrat. It turned out to be 10% Democrat. Republicans were not a majority of the electorate. And he did win independents in Iowa. So I don't know what she's talking about.
And so he's got some work to do as well.
Yes, that's right.
Let me just
CNN
make sure
polls
we get an answer, though, Ambassador Haley, because this is your home state. You were governor in the state of South Carolina. Do you need to win your home state in order to stay in this race? Is it do or die?
I think I need to do better than I did in New Hampshire. So this is a building.
That is not this is a building exercise. Folks, that's not how this works. This is a load of crap because they intend to pull what they have pulled in New Hampshire. They try to do it in, are you ready? First of all, there's no joke. I kid you not. In the memos, they seriously think they can win Michigan. Or again, it's just like, we can do really well in Michigan. Michigan is an open primary. That's why they're saying that. And if, again, it was a regular Republican primary, he would probably trounce her 85-15 in the state of Michigan. Like, that is not Republican at all. Michigan doesn't like Republicans like Nikki Haley at all. She would never carry the state of Michigan. She would get killed. And then on March 4th, of course, there's North Dakota, which is closed conventions and everything. With Ron DeSantis out, it's going to be Donald Trump pretty easily. It's like this closed caucus convention kind of thing. In Alaska, too, which is March 5th, that is an open primary, but they're not targeting that. Arkansas is an open primary. They're not targeting that. Colorado is a semi-open or semi-closed, however you want to state it. Modified. The word modified is what you'll see a lot of. Colorado is on their list. Maine, where Donald Trump had a 45-point lead, is a closed system. So I don't know where they're going on with this. But Massachusetts, again, independents can vote. It is a modified semi-closed. Massachusetts has a tiny percentage of registered Republicans. The vote that is there is because I've seen their math. And honestly, Massachusetts, the math looks right on its face. Here's where there's a problem with their calculations. The problem is a lot of these people that they're targeting as Democrats, yes, have voted as Democrats in the past, but they're not Trump-hating Democrats. These are like working class whites in Dorchester, and they're Irish Democrats. They're not the kind of Democrat that is going to be seething with hatred for Donald Trump so much that they're going to cross and vote into the Republican primary. That being said, there are so few Republicans that it is possible for her to do this in some of these states. However, she needs the money. North Carolina is another one that's semi-closed. We talked about that with Sandy Smith before. They talked about Texas because Texas is open. However, there comes a point where there just aren't enough of them. Like Massachusetts and New Hampshire, totally different. And the independents there, the targets are totally different. There are far fewer behavioral Democrats that are independents in Texas than there are in New Hampshire. That's not one on the list. However, Vermont is on her list. That's an open primary. There are very few registered Republicans in Vermont. She again got the endorsement of the Rhino governor, and they intend to try to get Democrats and independents to vote for her in Vermont. Again, though, you need money to pull off what she's talking about. The last one on her list is Virginia, which again is an open primary. It specifically cites Democrat Biden voters in Northern Virginia. and it's proportional. So again, though, that they're arguing is a plus, but it's not, because the only one that she could really sweep up a bunch of the delegates in is Vermont. And there's only 17 there, and it's winner take most. All right, just to read you the rules. If one candidate gets more than 50% of the statewide vote, then all 17 candidates go on a winner-take-all basis. If they don't, then delegates are proportionally allocated to candidates who meet a 20% threshold. So she could lose to Donald Trump 50.1 to 49.9. He's still going to get all 17. If no candidate meets the threshold, then it falls to 15. If they don't hit that threshold, it falls to 10. This is, of course, not going to happen, so who cares? But the rounding rules go after rounding to the nearest whole number. If the result exceeds 17, excess delegates are subtracted from the candidate who received the fewest votes of all the delegate eligible candidates. If rounding results are below 17, the additional delegate will be added to the candidate who received the most. So even in Vermont, where it's winner take most, and that's one of her targets, let's say she beats him by 50.1 to 40, or let's say she beats him 49.9 to 49.8, and a bunch of other candidates got, these others and people who have dropped get the remainder of tiny share, but it don't matter. It's below that threshold. The majority winner take all provision does not kick in. She's barely going to have more delegates than him. It goes to a New Hampshire-like proportional system. So again, the only place outside of that where she can really, why am I bringing this up? Because he's going to crush the delegate math everywhere else. California is next. Let me let her finish talking, and then we'll get into the map again. I want to show you the delegates. He's going to start way pulling away. Texas, California, they are on the same night. He's going to crush it. 70% of the delegates are going to be up on Super Tuesday. And then what happens right after that, folks? Florida, the third biggest state in the nation, on the 19th. There are states in between. They're all Trumpy states. I don't know what she's talking about. Georgia. Georgia is a closed, is an open primary. But again, I just don't think there are enough independents for her to do that. The only other open primary is in Missouri. There's not any. There's hardly any that are going to be able to swing that to her. And most of these do have winner-take-all provisions. So, for instance, even as well as she did in New Hampshire, which was the most fertile ground for her, if New Hampshire had the provisions that most of these other states have, she wouldn't have gotten a single delegate because he crossed 50%. Arizona, she's going to get killed in on the same day where the third largest delegate-rich state is up, Florida, on March 19. Maybe the state of Washington, it's semi-closed with 43 delegates, maybe. But again, there are thresholds there. It's winner take most by district. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. It's proportional statewide and winner take most by district. A little bit confusing. We'll go over that. But I mean, the big delegate rich states that you got up after that, maybe she could do well in Illinois on March 19th, which is the same day as Florida and Arizona, but she's going to lose almost 200 delegates right off the rip in winner take all states. And Illinois is a winner-take-all loophole. He hits 50, it's a wrap. There's not enough independents to stop him from taking those delegates. 64, it's winner-take-all loophole, otherwise known as a beauty contest. You're actually voting directly for delegates, the 51 district delegates, and 10 state delegates connected to a candidate. And sorry, Illinois has no threshold. It has a minimum. Or no, it doesn't. It has no threshold. He could win by one vote. And in all of these districts that she thinks she's going to be competitive in, and he'll take them all. This is just getting ridiculous now. Sorry, let's play and keep going because I love the delegate math. I get nerdy with the math. Let's listen to what the rest she has to say, and then we'll talk more about it, show you the size of the delegates here. And that's why I put it on a heat map, so you could get an idea of how fast these delegates will start to pile up.
Situation.
But
it's not about which state you get in which
Ambassador?
state. You don't.
Do you need to actually And I hear you saying you need to do better, but don't you need to win your home state to show that you can win your home state and really put some delegates on the map for yourself?
Well, we've got 17 delegates. He's got 32. I'd say that's pretty good to start. What I do think I need to do is
stop. I can't take it. Stop. You're basically beyond proportional allocation now. There's a few here and there. The delegate-rich states, you're freaking talking about 17 delegates in Vermont. He's going to thrash her in California. He's going to thrash her. He's got like more than 2/3 of the vote in the polls right now. And by the way, California is a closed primary. The other big one that night is Texas, which is open, but there aren't that many independents that are liberal. It's just not the case. They're not going to be seething with hatred to vote against Donald Trump. It's not fertile ground like New Hampshire would be fertile ground or Vermont. 17 delegates. She's so full of shit. I'm sick of listening to these delusions from these people. You want him arrested and imprisoned. And you want a handful of delegates, I'd say it's pretty good. It's not good. You lost by 30 points in Iowa where you thought you were coming in second and you thought you were going to win New Hampshire. Everyone knows you did. Stop pretending like you were happy with a 12-point loss. You were not. Governor Sununu promised you he was going to deliver that state, which would give you momentum going into South Carolina. He beat you, and he beat you by double digits. I'm sorry. I'm just like, the delusion factor here is just too much. You wonder why we have a society that tolerates, I'm using that word, the T word, that tolerates people's delusions. I'm born with a penis. I think I have a vagina. It's the same delusions that end up in mass shootings. It's not healthy. This is a deception and delusion.
I need to show that I'm building momentum. I need to show that I'm stronger in South Carolina than New Hampshire. Does that have to be a win? I don't think that necessarily has to be a win, but it certainly has to be better than what I did.
Yeah, Nikki. You'll be the first candidate in the history of a presidential primary who builds momentum off of getting their ass kicked in every state. Jesus. Take a Valium, go home, call Boeing, get another job.
Did New Hampshire, and it certainly has to be close. And so that's what we're focusing on. If we win, great. If not, we've got to show that we're continuing to narrow that margin along the way.
So I hear
to give people in Super Tuesday states a reason to know that they can continue to see and have us fight on.
Strength to deal with these freaking simpletons and idiots. I just can't take it anymore. It's so delusional. And that's not okay. It is not okay. Let's take a real quick break, then we'll come back with the map. Oh my God. Oh my God. Love of God. This is why for months I've been like putting out, when there's polls, whether they're mine or someone else's, I'm always like, let's talk about the delegate math. What does it mean if this poll is correct? Just admit it. You're running for the nominee of the Justice Department and Democrats are helping you. You're never going to win. Welcome, Adam, to a new member. All right, let's talk about our friends at Jam and Bean. Great Patriots, great coffee, bottom line. And by the way, everything else. See these custom gift boxes? They're awesome. I think we may be getting our new box today, which we'll go over with you on Wednesday, if we do. But yeah, great coffee, whether you like K-Cups, whether you like freshly, really roasted. I mean, the guys are roasting coffee is an art. And these guys are extremely talented. They're artists. Of course, we definitely want your opinion. They have the new bacon out. I can't wait. We're going to be trying that. All of the new stuff that's coming out for Valentine's Day. You just saw it. It was up. If you get a new subscription to Jam and Bean, the link's in the description, JAMN bean.com. Use the promo code TPP40 for the People's Pundit, TPP40. That will get you 40% off the first cost of the subscription right off the rip. Yet, still, Every time that subscription updates every month, renews every month, you're still going to get 10% off trailing from the subscription cost. It's an incredible deal. Again, one more time, jamandbean.com, TPP40. And by the way, their freeze-dried stuff is amazing. Bitto honeys. I can't eat any of that stuff in my teeth anymore. Freeze-dried is the only thing that I can enjoy when I want it. So good. And look at that bacon. Oh my God. You guys bacon lovers like me? Oh my God. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, that's why the negative, Leonardo da Vinci is dead right about the negativity of it all, why she has to be negative, because she needs to hustle these, she needs, as Don said, she needs to bilk the donors, and the only way to do that is to get negative, and be negative. Again, one more time, jamandbean.com, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout, and it'll get you 40% off, and when it renews, you're still going to get 10% off. It's a great deal. I love everything at Jam Bean. The popcorn, that's something at this point I'll never buy popcorn from the grocery store unless I'm like in a pinch and I need it for a party or something. I mean, all through the holidays, we had Jam and Bean popcorn out. Their caramel was just to die for. You know, that's like a big thing during the holidays. There's the trio. It's usually cheese, caramel, and regular. Popcorn you get in those tins. We had them with Jam and Bean, and I don't normally like the caramel popcorn. It's sticky and it's too sweet for me. Theirs was like savory, and it dissolves. Nothing sticks in your teeth. It dissolves. It's delicious. Laura was definitely right. The trailing taste is butter, and it's so like that lasting flavor you have in your mouth. It's butter. Send us again your feedback on Jam and Bean. Absolutely love them. Love them. All right, let's go to the map. Let's go to the map. Where's my map? Where are you? Oh, right. I have it on People's Pundit Daily. Let's go to the map so you can see the heat map on who has what delegates. Okay. And here we go. Okay. And I just went to New Hampshire, right? Or South Carolina, excuse me. You can see South Carolina is in the 40 to 80 delegate mark. You see how when you hover over the block, it'll show you all the other states that have that, right? When you're in this mark. This is what she's talking about here. Vermont, right? I mean, even you get to Massachusetts is in the 40 to 80 delegate mark, of course, because I believe it has 40 delegates. That would be one of the bigger targets for her, but that's really just about it. 80 to 120. Here, let me get rid of South Carolina so you can see. 80 to 120 gives you New York. The 120 to 160 is Florida. That is going for Trump, and it's going to go for Trump by big. He's going to win in Florida by something we've never seen before. And then you have California and Texas, where there are more than there are 160 delegates or more. Of course, like I said, when it comes to Texas, there's 162. It's winner take most. It's an open primary. All registered voters may participate. She's going to try to get Biden voters who are independents and Democrats that don't want to vote in their primary to vote in the Republican primary. Biden's going to need them. Biden's going to compete for them unless this is over for them by March 5th. Does it look like it's over for them when you're looking at Dean Phillips campaigning on online and he's in South Carolina right now, knocking on doors? Don't look like it's over for Dean Phillips now. All right. Anyway, there are 162 delegates that are bound, including 114 district delegates, 3 per district, and 48 at large, which is statewide delegates. Majority district lead receives all 3 delegates. So if a candidate wins 50.1% or more, they will take all 3. If a candidate wins with a plurality and more than one candidate is exceeding the 20% threshold, then the leader will get 2 and the second place will get 1. This is the thing. There aren't that many districts in these states where including her own, which we just went over, where Nikki Haley could conceivably stop him. Forget about win. She may have a handful here and there that she could win if she can pull off what she pulled off in New Hampshire. If it is typical Republican electorates, she won't win any of them. None of them. And he will hit a majority in basically almost all of them. That's how dominant he is. But let's say she's able to pull off and keep him below 50 and it's closer. She can win some delegates here and there, but It's just, guys, even in these districts where there are Democrats that will vote and independents that will vote, they're jerried. And they trail off in areas like, let's say, where was she last week? Trying to, I don't even know what the word is. Crash. It's not crash. She was trying to like a friggin' wart or a cancerous growth or something. She was trying to like attach herself to John O'Shea's fundraising event where Ken Paxton was at. I kid you not. Like, she's doing this to a lot of people. I've heard it, but Don just called me flat out. Like, you're not going to believe we parked her ass next door during our fundraising event trying to get donors and people to come over and support her. That's a great example of an area. It's Fort Worth, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Tarrant County, and then strolls into Parker. There's too many Jerry's where, like, Texas 12 shoots off into more conservative areas, even though a lot of those Republicans are affluent. There aren't enough independents to carry the 12th district for Nikki Haley. There aren't enough liberal independents to stop Donald Trump from hitting 50%. He's going to win 80 plus in Parker. And he was already romping it the last time we polled it back in for John, back in whenever it was, when DeSantis was still in the race. He was above 50 then. It's just hard to stop him from doing that. It just doesn't make any sense. And then if the candidate leads with right. If no candidate meets the threshold, we can just ignore that. If you want to know, then the 3 top vote getters each get a delegate. If the candidate, winning candidate, earns a majority of the vote statewide, they will take all 48 at-large delegates. If no candidate receives, by the way, he's above 60% in the state of Texas before DeSantis got out. Before. So where do you think he is now? And then over in California, real simple. Because of yours truly, I'm taking credit for it. It is. The president's own advisor was totally lost in the sauce on this. They did not understand delegate rules. And Harmeet was either totally confused or lying. I'm sorry, Harmeet. That's the truth. Jessica Patterson, who hates Donald Trump's guts, tried to turn this into a proportional state intentionally. Omitting, copying. I'm telling you, when she sent out the email, she copied and pasted without Rule 2B to try to trick the delegates into thinking that it was impossible for them to have a winner-take-all provision because the primary was before March 15th. If it wasn't for David Giglio getting attention to it, by the way, he's running in California 20 against 2 rhinos. Brought that up when Sandy Smith was running, when Sandy Smith was on. One's pretending to be MAGA. He's not. She's like a tick, Hector. Totally right, like a tick. Yeah, and if he was above 50 back then, Matt, where do you think he is now? May 2023. Thanks, Matt, for giving. It was that Texas 12 poll. Everybody was still in the race back then. And Trump was already above 50 back then. 80% plus Hispanics in that district said they're America Firsters. Of those who were voting in the Republican primary, of course. Or would. Anyway, because David Giglio raised attention, exposed the California GOP attempt to reduce Donald Trump's delegate haul in the state of California. And because Robert Barnes backed me when I went to basically math war with these people, they were stopped. So now it's like worst case scenario for Never Trump. It is still considered a winner take most, but it is a closed primary. And the rule changes that they proposed, as you can read here, never went through. There is now a winner take all provision with a 20% statewide threshold. And let me just pop up the green. Let me just make sure, because I was waiting on something to be changed, but I don't think that it would really. It's not going to be relevant on this primary. I don't believe. If a candidate receives a majority of the statewide vote, 50 plus 1, that candidate shall be awarded all of California's delegates. So in other words, it overrides the rounding rules, and it overrides the district delegate math that Jessica Patterson attempted to put forward. Now, if no candidate receives a majority of the statewide vote, and that's not going to happen, Donald Trump's going to win overwhelmingly, then delegates shall be awarded proportionally, starting with the candidate who received the most votes statewide. You compute that candidate's statewide vote, times it by the total number of at-large delegates, and divide it by the total statewide, and round up to the next highest integer. Continue with the next highest vote getter until all of the delegates have been assigned. It is not clear if the 3 RNC delegates are included in this category or not. That's what we have been waiting for, and I think it's because everyone just knows Donald Trump's going to hit the majority threshold rule, so they haven't written rules yet that specify what to do with those 3 RNC at-large delegates. I think they just don't care at this point because they know that it's a wrap. So he's going to take them, and that's all there is to it. So they don't have to write it, because it would only be relevant if nobody hit the majority threshold, and they would have to calculate it by using proportionality. But because that's not going to happen, I think they basically said, the hell with it. We can elaborate on that when we need to elaborate on it. But now you get the idea of just how fast the delegate math is going. You get the idea of just how fast the delegate math is going to start to move away from Nikki Haley. Trump's going to take all 169 delegates in the state of California. He will take, if not all, almost all of the 162 in the state of Texas. And yet she wants you to pretend like she's going to make some magic in Massachusetts, where there's no way she's hitting 50%. Trump is polling above 50% in Massachusetts. If she could pull off some kind of a miracle and get him down below that, maybe then the rounding rules kick in, and she would be able to do something there. But it's not going to be anywhere near enough to even look competitive anymore. You understand what I'm saying? Once this is done, this Vermont little hoax, what she thinks she can do in Massachusetts and Virginia, it's never going to be enough. She's going to be separated by an enormous amount. And then when you start to scroll up over here, you're going to see Donald Trump like over here, and Nikki Haley still all the way the hell over here. I mean, it's going to look really, really different than it does right now. It's just crazy to have to keep going on and on with these delusions. It's just absolutely driving us. It's driving us absolutely nuts. Looks like, and we'll get into some of that other side. We'll save that for another show. But all right, there we go. There it is. With that in mind, it is already 1:58. Load it. All right, so this would even still, if she was to pull it off, I'm trying to show you the best case scenario for her, and that would take an enormous amount of money. So I'm not saying like this isn't something that the Trump wing of the party should not take seriously. It is. And I'm telling you, the math that they have down is serious and correct. I'm just telling you that it's still like it's ridiculous, because even if you add up everything that they think they can win, and you do the actual delegate math on what the most likely scenarios would be in their best case scenario, there's no chance to get anywhere near that bar. Excuse me. That bar. There is no way to hit that line. You see that line? That line is the winner line. And there's really not even a possibility that they can stop him from hitting the delegate majority to clinch the nomination. Like, even in their best case scenario, like, it would have to be beyond their best case scenario. Like, she routs him in Vermont. She routs him in Virginia. She routs him in Massachusetts. North Carolina's close. Texas is close. Guys, come on. This is just crazy. It's crazy. All right. So it's 2 o'clock. We got to call it a day already. Unbelievable how quick that show went by. All right. So Wednesday, don't forget, noon Eastern Standard Time. South Carolina, the graphics look amazing, right? We will have Nevada as well, but it's just, going to be bing, bing, bing. What else? What else? What else? I know I'm missing some. Oh, I asked locals online over the weekend if they had heard anybody refer to or push the public polling project, because I haven't really been pushing it. And yet we got a boost of contributions to both the Georgia and national survey over the weekend. And I'm not including one very substantial contribution, and I'm not sure where it came from, but thank you to everybody who did. Thanks to everybody who brought it up, or whoever, it may be, and everyone who contributes and shares. I haven't been pushing it. We'll see what we do going forward. I don't want to pull South Carolina now. If we're going to pull South Carolina, we'll do it very close, like a final poll before, because we can't pull it more than once. So we'll do it like a final poll right before the primary. And I'm leaning towards we are going to do that. The national poll has to be done again. With everybody out of the race, we need to update our trends. And also, by the way, get another Biden versus Trump head-to-head. It's almost the end of January. We're usually monthly, and if we can't do it monthly, we try to do it quarterly. That national that's up now and about 80% funded, that was the Rust Belt poll and at least one other national poll. So just so everybody understands, because we show the progress, every poll is basically at $8,000. That is obviously not the cost of doing a poll. So we tried to keep it way, way down as much as we could. So this would be the third one we're doing on that national campaign. But it's got to get done, because we are way, what was it? Trump like 62. Haley was at like 13. She surpassed DeSantis, who was behind at like 11. We got to update our national numbers. We have got to do that. So if you can, share it far and wide, get some more traction on it. Do what you can. All right. And let's try to get it a little bit more funded, because we didn't even fund it once to do all the other polls that we've done. And yeah, the Rust Belt poll, which was massive, like 6,000 plus responses, was huge. And the last two national polls have been over 3,000. So they're not cheap. All right. But share them far and wide. Let me know on locals whether or not you guys heard anything. I mean, somebody must have said something. Somebody must have said something. Let me just give you this on the way out. Okay. And by the way, I'm not going to read it all. I'm just going to say this is it. So there's Steve Schwartzman. What does he think of the candidates? Let me just tell you what he said of Joe Biden in a recent meeting he thought nobody was listening to. That Joe Biden was infirm but controllable, meaning he is a fragile mental and physically. He's a fragile man, but that's okay because he's controllable. All right, and always has been, is what he said. Even before he was mentally and physically infirm, he was always controllable and has been for many years when he was in the Senate. Right. So he goes on to talk about Nikki Haley. And there's a lot there, but I'm just going to say he calls Nikki Haley bought and paid for. And there was no pushback from anybody in the room. He said, she is what she is. She's bought and paid for. So who cares? That's what he said. All right. And then when they brought up President Trump, who he prided himself on being, or at least that's the way he sounded, he prided himself on being like an advisor to Trump, but also that he had a big hand in getting Donald Trump to drop the election challenges or whatever. Because, it's about the good of the country, Donald, Mr. President. That's even, we have to hear that bloviating. But when asked about him returning, he said, quote, Trump is a problem. He won't play ball. Can't be controlled. I'll tell you what, with friends like these, who needs enemies? With friends like the ones Donald Trump has, who needs enemies? Anyway, it's safe to say he wasn't stoked about the prospect of Donald Trump coming back despite being a one-time ally. That's how these donors are. They're not your friends. They're not your allies. He only gave to Donald Trump because he was trying to kiss his ass. Donald Trump doesn't need money from people like Steve Schwartzman. They come later and they ask to give to him. That's how it works. I kid you not. It's the complete opposite of what happens with every other candidate who has to go hat in hand, puckered lips, asking which cheek they want to be kissed in order for them to give them the money so they can have a viable campaign. Total opposite of Donald Trump. So they act like they like him when they have no damn choice. Behind closed doors, they tell you what a problem Donald Trump is because he can't be controlled. You too, Steve. I dare you to deny it. All right. Like the videos if you like them. Don't forget to share them far and wide. If you're on locals, if you were on YouTube, it would be great if you'd mosey on over to Rumble. Also like and subscribe there. All of these metrics are huge help. If you're watching on Rumble, if you still have a YouTube account, it would be great if you'd mosey on over and hit the like button over there. Even subscribe, even if you're not going to watch it there. Again, all these metrics are huge help. If you're on Getter, go ahead and give us those likes. Don't forget, at People's Pundit on Getter, at People's_Pundit on X, because somebody has the damn handle and Twitter will not remove it for me. I'm going to try to get Elon Musk to do it so I can be consistent across all platforms. Same thing with Truth as Getter, at People's Pundit on Truth. All right. But if you are on locals, give it a like you can on Getter, give it a heart. Share it far and wide. The best place to follow us, of course, is on locals to support us. That is peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. I'm going to get some lunch. Hope you guys do too. And I'll see you Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time. None but love for you. Stay tuned. Stay informed. Deuces! That's the right one. Special guest to our guest, Sandy Smith. You're welcome back anytime. We love you over here, Sandy. Thanks for joining.